It was cold, a very cold day in December. The air bit at your cheeks and turned your breath to mist. Alara, a girl of 8 years old, wrapped her thin coat tighter around her small frame. She walked alongside her mother, whose shoulders were slumped with a weary sigh. They were on the main street. Everyone else seemed happy and bright. Shoppers rushed past them, their arms full of bags, their faces lit with anticipation. The city was a sea of red and green. Christmas music spilled from doorways and the smell of roasting chestnuts hung in the air. Alara and her mother could not afford such luxuries. They lived in a small apartment above a closed bakery. The rent was a struggle every month. Her younger brother Leo, a boy of 6, was home with a slight fever. Her mother worked 2 jobs, but it was not enough. Still, Alara's eyes were wide with wonder. She pressed her nose against the glass of a toy shop window. A porcelain doll in a pink dress smiled at her. Leo would have loved the shiny red train set. A pang of sadness hit her stomach, but she quickly pushed it away. They had each other. That was what truly mattered. A few blocks away stood the grandest house in the city. It was a mansion of stone and dark wood. High iron fences surrounded it, a silent fortress against the world. Inside, Mr. Alistair Finch sat alone. He was an old man with a face etched by time and sorrow. He wore a dark wool suit and stared out his large bay window. He did not see the festive lights or the smiling people. He only saw a grey world. His world had ended 20 years ago. His beloved wife Clara had died suddenly. Their daughter Lily, who was only 5 at the time, had been in the car with her. Both of them gone. Just like that. The world had become a silent, empty place. He had all the money one could ever want. He had art from across the globe. He had a library that held thousands of books. He had a staff of people who moved through his home like ghosts. But he did not have warmth. He did not have laughter. He did not have love. He was an island in a sea of people. He had built this fortress around his heart, and he did not let anyone in. He thought he did not want anyone to come in. He had grown accustomed to the quiet. It was a heavy quiet, a lonely quiet. But it was his quiet. Alara and her mother turned down a quiet side street. They had a few more blocks to walk home. As they passed the imposing iron fence of the Finch mansion, Alara noticed him. He was a silhouette in the window, a man sitting perfectly still. He was looking out, but he did not seem to be seeing. There was a deep sadness in his posture, a stillness that spoke of profound loss. Alara felt a little tug in her heart. She imagined him all alone in that massive house. She knew what it was like to be alone. Her mother was with her, but her father was gone. The world felt smaller without him. But this man, he was completely alone. Her mother hurried her along. It was getting late, but Alara kept glancing back. The man was still there, a single figure in a window. That night, Alara could not sleep. The image of the old man was burned into her mind. She thought of her small family, her mother working so hard, her little brother Leo, who was now sleeping soundly, his fever gone. They did not have much, but they had each other. They had laughter. They had a mother who loved them more than anything. They had a small table, a small stove, and a little Christmas tree her mother had bought with a few spare dollars. What did that man have? The thought was a painful one. A plan started to form in her young mind, a simple plan, a kind plan. The next morning she woke up early. She found a piece of cardboard from an old delivery box. She found some red and green markers that were almost out of ink. She took her time. She drew a picture of a small house with smoke curling from the chimney. She drew a little Christmas tree with a star on top. She drew 3 stick figures holding hands. They were smiling. Then she wrote in her neatest handwriting. The letters were a little shaky, but they were full of heart. Our dinner table is small, but there is always room for one more. We want you to be part of our family on Christmas Day. She signed it the Millers. She knew their last name, but it felt more personal to her. She left a blank space next to her family. She showed the card to her mother. Her mother's face was a mix of concern and pride. Alara, that is a beautiful idea. But Mr. Finch, he is a very private man. He does not talk to anyone. Alara's eyes were earnest, but he looks so sad, Mom. What if he is just waiting for someone to ask? Her mother looked at her daughter's kind face and her heart melted. All right, my little one. But you must be ready for him to say no. Alara nodded, a determined look on her face. She would not be discouraged. The next afternoon, Alara walked alone to the Finch mansion. The sky was grey and heavy with the promise of more snow. She held the cardboard card tightly in her mittened hand. The iron fence looked even more imposing up close. The gates were enormous and felt like they were guarding a castle. She walked up to the large front door and rang the bell. The chimes sounded impossibly loud in the quiet street. After a moment, the door opened. A very tall and serious-looking man stood there. He was the butler, she was sure of it. His face was a mask of polite indifference. Yes, he said, his voice flat. I need to see Mr. Finch, please, Alara said, her voice a little shaky. The butler looked down at her with a hint of an eyebrow raised. Mr. Finch is not seeing anyone, especially not children. You will have to leave. He started to close the door. No, wait, please, Alara cried out. It is important. It is about Christmas. The butler sighed a small, impatient puff of air. I do not care about Christmas. Mr. Finch does not care about Christmas. Now please go. Who is it, Thomas? A deep voice boomed from within the house. It was Mr. Finch. The butler stiffened. "It is a small girl, sir. She says she has something for you, a small girl." The voice asked with a hint of curiosity. "Let her in." The butler's face was a picture of dismay, but he moved aside. Ilara stepped into a massive foyer. The ceilings were so high they seemed to disappear into the gloom. A huge chandelier hung from above, but it was unlit. The air was cold and smelled of old wood and dust. The house was beautiful, but it felt dead. The absence of life was almost a presence in itself. Mr. Finch stood at the end of a long hallway. He was taller than she expected. His hair was pure white and his eyes were dark pools of endless sadness. "What do you want, child?" he asked, his voice without emotion. Ilara walked down the hall, her small footsteps echoing loudly on the marble floor. She held out the card with both hands. "My name is Ilara. I live down the street with my mum and my brother Leo. We are having Christmas dinner and we wanted to invite you. We saw you in your window and you looked sad and we thought you might be lonely." She spoke it all in one breath. Mr. Finch took the card. His fingers were long and thin. He looked at the simple drawing of the house and the smiling stick figures. He saw his name written neatly in the blank space. He read the words, "Our dinner table is small, but there is always room for one more. We want you to be part of our family on Christmas Day." He looked at the card for a long moment. A silence fell over the house, a silence more profound than any she had ever known. Then he looked up at Ilara. His dark eyes met her bright ones, and something in him broke. He did not make a sound at first, just a gasp, a sound of utter shock. His face crumpled. The tight mask of sorrow he had worn for 20 years shattered. A single tear rolled down his cheek, a hot track on a cold surface. Then another and another. They came in a flood. He lowered his head and a deep wrenching sob tore from his throat. He put a hand over his mouth as if to silence it, but he could not. He was not a man who cried. He had not cried when he heard the news. He had not cried at the funeral. The grief had been too big, too heavy to be expressed in tears. It had just frozen him inside. But this small act of kindness, this simple card from a child had thawed him. He was a broken man and he was weeping in front of a stranger, a little girl. Ilara was not scared. She simply walked closer to him and put her small hand on his arm. His coat was rough and a little dusty. "Are you okay, sir?" she asked, a voice soft. He shook his head, his chest heaving with sobs. The butler Thomas, who had been watching from the shadows, looked horrified. He had never seen his employer show such emotion. Not in all the years he had worked for him. He moved forward as if to intervene, but then he stopped. There was nothing he could do. This was a private moment of release that had been waiting a long, long time. After what seemed like an eternity, Mr. Finch pulled himself together. He wiped his eyes with a handkerchief he pulled from his pocket. He was still shaking a little. "I am sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I do not know what came over me." "It is okay to be sad," Ilara said. "My mom says it is good to let the sad out." He looked at her again, truly looked at her. He saw her simple coat, her worn mittens, her kind eyes. He saw the genuine warmth in her. He could not remember the last time someone had looked at him with such genuine concern. The invitation, a simple piece of cardboard, was the most precious thing he had ever been given. "I thank you, Ilara," he said, his voice a bit stronger now. "I will be there." Ilara's face lit up with a smile so bright it could have warmed the entire house. "Wonderful. We will be waiting." She gave his arm a little squeeze and then she turned and walked back down the long hallway. The butler opened the door for her and this time he gave her a very small nod. She ran all the way home, her heart bursting with happiness. She had done it. Christmas Eve arrived and Ilara's mother was a flurry of activity. She was not a great cook, but she was making her special stew with vegetables and a few scraps of meat she had managed to get. Leo was helping her string popcorn onto a thread to put on their little tree. They had not heard from Mr. Finch since Ilara's visit. Her mother was starting to worry he had changed his mind. "He is a rich man, Ilara. He probably has other plans. You must not be disappointed. He said he would come," Ilara said with quiet confidence. He would not lie. In his mansion, Mr. Finch was having the most unusual Christmas Eve of his life. He had spent the day talking to his butler Thomas. He was not giving orders. He was asking questions. What kind of gifts do children like? What kind of food do people cook for Christmas dinner? Thomas was astounded. He had not had a real conversation with his employer in years. Mr. Finch had spent the afternoon wrapping presents. He found a new doll that looked just like the one in the window Ilara had been looking at. He bought a shiny red train set, a perfect match for Leo. He bought Ilara's mother a beautiful soft wool shawl and a new pair of shoes. He did not buy these things with a sense of duty or charity. He bought them with a sense of joy. The joy of giving, the joy of being part of something again. He felt a warmth in his chest he thought he had forgotten. Christmas Day dawned gray and snowy. The city was quiet, a gentle blanket of white covering everything. Ilara and Leo woke up to a small stack of presents their mother had bought for them. A new coloring book for Leo, a set of crayons for Ilara. They were overjoyed. Their mother watched them with a lump in her throat. She had not thought she would be able to afford even this much. A knock came at the door just as she was finishing the stew. It was not a grand knock, but a small, hesitant one. "That must be him," Ilara whispered, her eyes wide. Her mother opened the door. Mr. Finch stood there. He was wearing an old overcoat and a simple suit. He was holding two large boxes wrapped in plain brown paper with red ribbons. His face was full of nerves and a tiny bit of hope. He looked around the small apartment. The air was full of the smell of stew and the pine scent of their little tree. The room was not big, but it was filled with light and love. The sight of their little Christmas tree decorated with popcorn and paper stars was more beautiful to him than any expensive ornament. "Come in, please," Ilara's mother said with a warm smile. "We are so glad you could make it." Mr. Finch stepped inside. He handed the gifts to Ilara's mother. "These are for you and the children. I hope you will accept them." Ilara and Leo were shy at first, but the joy of the presents quickly overcame their shyness. When Ilara opened the box and saw the doll, she gasped. It was the very same doll from the window. Leo shrieked with delight when he saw the train set. The apartment filled with the happy sounds of a new toy train running around the floor. And Ilara holding her new doll. Mr. Finch sat at the small kitchen table. The table was covered with a simple checkered tablecloth. He had not sat at a table like this in decades. He had forgotten the comfort of such a simple space. They ate dinner. The stew was the most delicious thing Mr. Finch had ever tasted. It was not the food itself, but the company. He watched Ilara and Leo talk and laugh. He watched Ilara's mother smile, a genuine, beautiful smile. For the first time in 20 years, he spoke about his wife and his daughter. He talked about Clara's kindness and Lily's laughter. He did not cry this time, he just spoke. And Ilara's mother listened, her eyes full of empathy. The ghosts in his heart were not so scary anymore. He was sharing them and they were being accepted. The evening was perfect. They ate the cookies and the simple cake they had made for him. They drank hot cocoa. They did not have an expensive fireplace, but the small radiator in the corner made a cozy sound. The apartment was not grand, but it was a home. It was warm. It was filled with life. Mr. Finch felt a sense of belonging he had not known since he was a young man. He had come here thinking he was doing a kindness to a poor family. He now knew they had done a kindness to him, one he could not repay with all the money in the world. They had given him his heart back. He left late that night, the snow now falling heavily. Ilara and her family waved goodbye from the window. Mr. Finch walked home feeling lighter than air. He looked up at the stars through the swirling snowflakes, and he felt a peace he had not known for a very long time. In the coming months, Mr. Finch became a regular visitor. He helped Ilara's mother start a small bakery business, something she had always dreamed of. He found a good apartment for them, a clean, warm place with big windows, but he did not just give them money. He gave them his time. He read stories to Leo. He helped Ilara with her schoolwork. He became the grandfather they had not had. The cold, lonely fortress that was his mansion became a place of warmth and life again. It was often filled with the laughter of children. The next Christmas came. This time Mr. Finch hosted the dinner at his mansion. He had the huge chandelier lit, and the entire house was filled with warmth and light. The table was set for 5. He sat at the head of the table. On his right was Ilara's mother, on his left Ilara. Leo was at the other end of the table. He looked around the beautiful room. It was not empty anymore. It was full. It was full of family. He smiled a genuine happy smile. He no longer felt lonely. He was home. Later that evening, when everyone was asleep, he went into his study. He opened a small wooden box he kept on his desk. Inside was the card Ilara had given him. The cardboard was a little worn, the red and green markers a bit faded. He picked it up and read the words again. "Our dinner table is small, but there is always room for one more. We want you to be part of our family on Christmas Day." He looked at the drawing of the house and the smiling stick figures. He looked at the blank space he had filled. It was not blank anymore. It was part of the picture. The most important part. He put the card back in the box and closed it. He looked up at the window, the same window where he had sat for so many years. The snow was falling, a beautiful white curtain. But he was no longer looking at a gray world. He was looking at a world full of hope and kindness and love. He had not broken down that day. He had broken open, and he was forever grateful.